Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 8th and final event of this series of the Amherst Irish Association. Thank you all for joining us. Most of you are familiar with how we started. We started 8 years ago in Amherst after the Blarney blowout, and today is the 54th event that we have put on in that time. So congratulations to everyone who's participated, and thank you for joining us again today. Thank you to our members. You are our lifeblood, and we do all of this because we value you, and we are grateful to you for your consistent support. And I'd also like to thank the directors of the Amherst Irish Association, Annie Rogers, who gave us, shared such lovely poetry with us in our last event, and Ida O'Carroll, who brought us so much wonderful information about Bridget, who is near and dear to the heart of the Amherst Irish Association, and to Tim Goodhind, our wonderful treasurer, and runs the web page and has presented for us about genealogy on a number of occasions. And also to Amanda Bernhard and Jonathan Kennedy, who we will hear from soon. And also, before I turn it over, I want to thank the government of Ireland and the Immigrant Support Program for their support, and particularly Leisha Moore at the Boston Consulate. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ida, is it? Yeah.
Good, Sam. Thank you, Sam. Fáilte roimhis Jock, welcome everybody. I'd like to, as my introduction to the workshop session, the Ceardlann today, I'd like to say a few words in appreciation of our two teachers, Seanachán agus Amanda. Buchas fuile a gohfuil lo bert as a cuid cabhrach agus jenan siad sár obair our son, Common Gaeilge Amherst. They contribute so much to our little association, and they're just at the heart of what we do. They're musicians, gifted teachers, and they are also directors of this community-based association. And invariably, when we do our solstice event, when we do our hoolie in September, they are the ones who gather musicians because they have a reputation here in the Pioneer Valley for promoting Irish culture, language, music, and you couldn't find better teachers. So I praise their online learning system, Córa le Gaeilge. You can check it out afterwards. But please, it is my pleasure to introduce you to Seanachán agus Amanda go raibh míle maith agaibh. Away live.
To hard of a dress. Thanks so much. That's very kind of you. Well, welcome everybody. Fáilte roimh. Welcome everybody. So for today's workshop, Ceardlann means workshop. Ceardlann. We thought it would be best for me to just give a very, very brief intro to what Irish is, and then what we'd like to do is split up participants perhaps into two groups, which we'll talk about again in just a few moments, and give you all opportunities to speak some Irish, practice some, whether you know some or not. It doesn't really matter at all. And then we'll have some, any questions, any Q&A towards the end. You can always email us at any time anyway. So I'd like to just for a moment share my screen with you. And if anyone has any trouble or difficulty seeing this, please just let me know somehow or let somebody else know. So just a quick introduction to Irish is, as an American growing up, I always heard it referred to as Gaelic. So the first instance of any recollection I have of the language was going out to lunch with my grandparents, so my mother's parents, down in southeastern Massachusetts. And my grandmother had a friend over. I was very young, maybe 6 or 7. And I remember my grandmother saying, and she speaks Gaelic. And at the time I thought she said garlic. And I thought to myself, well, that's a strange thing. I thought that's something you eat. And then the woman was very kind. I don't remember anything else, but she turned around and she spoke to me, I think, in Irish a bit, and just kind of smiled, and there that was that. And later on, I became more and more interested. But today, in the 21st century, at least in Ireland, when we are speaking in English, we generally refer to it as Irish. Do you have any Irish? Right? Do you speak any Gaelic? Do you speak any Irish? In Ireland, anyway, when you say Gaelic, usually the understanding is Scottish Gaelic, Scottish Gaelic. That's Gaelic, Irish is Irish. Now, in the language itself, it's Gaelic. Literally, actually, you can say Gaelic or Gaelic or Gaeilge if you're down towards more Aegis part of the country, down in the south. Gaeilge, which is spelled quite a bit differently, but it's all the same language. So Amanda and I are a bit nerdy about this. We are both from Massachusetts, and we moved to Ireland in 2012, and we both earned master's degrees in the language, in Irish. And one of the challenges that we had coming back, well, actually, one of the challenges we had before we went was here at the time anyway, there are lots of opportunities to read or maybe do something written with Irish, but there were very few speaking opportunities. And the people that were around at the time, would not have been considered like fluent speakers. There were a few, but not too many. So when we came back, one of the things we wanted to do is put together a service where people could log in from the online. Something we're all very familiar with at this point, but in 2012 and 13 it was a bit different. And you can just practice spoken Irish. So that's a little bit about us, what we do. So Irish is a Celtic language. There's for a long time you could say Celtic languages were spoken throughout Britain and much of Western and Central Europe. Within Britain and Ireland, we had two groups of Celtic languages, and Irish is a part of a group that is called a Q Celtic language. Relatives are Scottish Gaelic, Manx, Welsh, Breton, and Cornish. It's an Indo-European language, and as much as English is a Germanic language, Irish is a Celtic language, and that's kind of how they're separated out. Of course, being neighbors for so very long, there are some words from English that are in Irish, and vice versa. Languages, people share things constantly throughout time. So it's first postulated that the first speakers of what we now would consider an ancestral language of Irish kind of arrived to Ireland about 500 BC. They weren't the first arrivals, though, because the island was already populated with people speaking a different language. And over time, these what we call Celtic-speaking peoples, their culture, their language generally filled the island. In terms of neighbors, what we now today call Middle Irish eventually broke into Modern Irish, Scottish Gaelic, and Manx. So myself, I can understand about half of what a Scottish Gaelic speaker says-ish. If I hear Manx, I can get the gist of it. If I read it, I can get the gist of it. So there's some relation, but they're still technically different languages. As far as we could tell, we generally just classify the language in terms of Old Irish, which is 600 to about 900. Middle Irish is up to about 1200. Early Modern Irish is to about 1650. One of the and again, this is a super quick intro, so there's so many interesting things that can be said about the language at different points in history. But one of the interesting bits about early Modern Irish is they had something that we call classical Modern Irish, where it was a standardized written language that was used by professional writers, poets, and so forth. And so that existed, but what happened was the language that people spoke diverged from the classical written language. And so over time, the written standard kind of calcified, and it wasn't reflective of what people were speaking. So that kind of all fell apart. And then modern period is from about 1650 to now. Irish is grossly categorized into three major dialects with many minor dialects with each one. Generally today, we say there's Munster Irish in the south, Connacht Irish in the middle part of the country, and Ulster Irish in the north. It's the same language. Sometimes, especially as you're getting into it, you might see the same word pronounced two different ways, and you might be a bit confused, like, oh, how does that work? Rest assured, it's very logical, and once you get practiced Any Irish speaker can network with any other Irish speaker. It's really not that too much of a challenge. There's roughly about 130,000 native speakers in Ireland, and this is just in the Republic, and there's about 1.5 million non-native speakers as well. One thing I wanted to say about some of the numbers I'll be telling you is that some of it is what we call self-reporting data. So people are asked questions like, would you consider yourself able to speak Irish or use it or whatever? And so it's self-reporting that way. The Great Famine on Corca Mór was not only a devastating blow to the Irish people, but also to the language. The island lost about a quarter of the population due to emigration or death, and a good chunk of that was Irish speaking. By the end of British rule, only about 15% or less of the population actually spoke Irish. With the new state in the Republic, there were efforts made by them, but also by non-state organizations to kind of promote and revive the language, incorporate it into civil service, into the educational system, and so forth. In 2007, Irish became the 23rd official language in the European Union. Northern Ireland, which for a time, as we are all familiar, had some pretty serious sectarian violence and troubles, there actually is a growing scene of people in the north who are very interested in Irish that would not have necessarily a traditional connection to the language and certainly to the Republic. Linda Irvine is a famous example of an East Belfast resident who comes from a very loyalist background, and she's all in. She's absolutely mad for Irish, and she's really doing a lot of service by connecting people with the language that really kind of crosses those divisions. It doesn't matter whether you think of yourself as British or Irish. It's a language that we all speak. One of the things that everyone hears, anyone who has an interest in Irish, is you inevitably will hear something about it being a dead language, or is that still around, or it's kind of a dying, that type of thing, dying language. And while there is not necessarily a bright and rosy positive picture to the whole thing, it's a statement and it's a sentiment that's been expressed for a few hundred years, right? But Irish is still here and people still speak it. I have friends who have children who are very young and they actually don't speak English yet. They're 2 and 3, and they don't know English yet. They only raised in Irish, and they will learn English very quickly and very rapidly as they grow up older. So it's definitely very alive in certain communities. Forest, the Gaeilge, is an agency that's responsible for planning and development of the language over the entire island, and that's a really cool thing because before it was limited to the Republic, but now it again crosses borders and goes into the north to unify these Irish-speaking communities. In 2022, well, a lot of this data comes from the 2016 census, but generally speaking, County Galway, Gaeilge, where we went to university, Galway takes the cake, number one, with about 49% of the population saying, quote, again, self-reporting, right? Quote, I can speak Irish, right? Followed by Clare, Cork, and Mayo. Once you leave cities and the urban centers, the largest actual numbers of speakers are actually in Donegal, in a place called Bunbeg and Derrybeg. So Derrybega and Bunbeg. I will make these slides available to you later, but just a quick look at a couple things here. The towns that have the high, because I think there's a connection here that I want to make, this, I think is fairly important. The highest number of daily Irish speakers is Dublin and the suburbs. So something you might also hear if you are proceeding with Irish is sometimes you'll hear people slagging on Dublin Irish speakers, or, they don't speak like real Irish or something. It's not a common sentiment, but it's something that's kind of in the air. And I find that very distasteful because there are a lot of people in Dublin, in the surrounds, that are very, very serious about Irish language studies and working on their Irish and promoting it. So Dublin and the surrounds have an incredibly large number of people who are daily Irish speakers. When we get to the highest percentage of Irish speakers, then we switch to the opposite end of the spectrum, leaving the urban centers, heading to the country. So in Donegal, we have Mian Lara, Ran the Farsta, and then we bounce down to Galway to Caharua, back up to Donegal, to Bunmaleka, and the aforementioned Bunbeg and Derrybega. Lastly, one of the things to look at is, I don't want to use the term practicality of the language, but there is a large percentage of Irish speaking done within the educational system and not necessarily without. And when we look here, this is a frequency of use. Age goes young at the bottom, older up top. And you can see here that there is a distinct bubble of school age people using Irish daily. It's quite, that's an appreciable amount. But then as they get older, it shrinks, right? So a discussion that people have is, we've got all these people using Irish daily in the educational system, but when they leave when they leave that system, they go out into the economy, into the workplace, it falls off rapidly. So how do we how can we incorporate that or keep that going on even outside of the education system? Just to actually like to wrap up here, speaking of the educational system, one part of that is a grassroots effort called the Gaeilge or Gaeilge, and it's an Irish medium educational system where all students going through it learn the standard curriculum instead of English, but learn it through Irish. In direct contrast with state efforts, it's totally grassroots run, demanded, started in the early 70s, and I haven't heard anything different lately, but I've been out of touch for the past year because of the pandemic or so. But most Gaeilge, they often have waiting lists. There are a lot of people looking to get into them. We can, parse that data at a different time for different reasons, but still it shows that there's an incredible demand at the grassroots effort for people to introduce their children to Irish and make that a part of their lives. Again, even if it's only in the educational system, but once you get it when you're younger, it's there. You might forget a bit, but once you have solid foundations, I think that's very, very important. Right. Crash course in the Irish language. One other note I'd like to add is that the last numbers I saw estimated that the number of Irish speakers in North America edged towards 30,000. That's a couple years old. I really should get updated data, but that was very impressive to me. It's like, wow, really? Just self-reported, there are an estimated 30,000 people in North America that feel like they can speak Irish to some point. I think that's, great, and when Amanda and I are friends, and I see our friend Aidan is online as well. Hello, Aidan. When we attend language schools in Ireland, it's a very international crowd. There's a lot of people not from Ireland who are there. There are people who are actually Irish born, but live in other places, and they come home to see family and then do these language schools. So it's a very mixed situation, and it's great to see. When Amanda and I lived in Galway City, one of our neighbors, the family is originally from Nigeria, but they moved to Ireland, and they had their children in Ireland. And all three kids, born and raised in Galway, they attended a Gaeilge school. They spoke, fluent English and Irish, spoke beautiful Connacht Irish, and of course their home language as well. So the language is really, the old stereotype from the day past of, it's those poor country people doing their country Irish things out there. That's nice. It's not true. There's a lot of interest in Irish and Irish speaking in Ireland, in the cities, and outside of the country itself. So with that said, here are us two Americans hoping to teach you all a bit of Irish anyway, and hopefully wet your whistle to inspire you to continue on your language journey. So with that, I'll turn it over to the brains of the operation, Amanda.
Thank you. I actually think it might be a good time to check in with people and see if anybody has questions about that short presentation Jonathan just gave about Irish as a language, how it is spoken, how it's used. Does anybody have burning questions that they'd like to ask first before we start speaking it a bit ourselves? No.
No, we have
At the
to,
moment, that's
we need to
okay.
have the dramatic pause.
Okay.
I'm a high school teacher, so it's like you have to wait uncomfortably long second extra just to get people to ask.
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm curious if some significant portion of people speaking Irish are doing it as a political stance as well as a genuine, as a just a language, but also does it have a sort of a political edge to it, to the motivation?
Would you be referencing maybe up in Northern Ireland?
I could.
Or in the Republic.
Yeah. Well, I would say, so I have some good friends who are all scattered from the north. And one of them, my first Irish teacher, dear friend of ours, Dahi Sproul, he's from Derry. And he actually grew up in the 60s and 70s speaking and becoming quite good in Irish in the British school system. So Irish was taught and he did very well. So he, you know, he's got this funny story of growing up and literally being present on day one of the Troubles as a teenager and watching it all unfold, but yet going to school in a British system and learning perfectly wonderful Irish. That was then. I have another friend who grew up in West Belfast, and his name is Eamon, and his sister is Roisin. And he probably was born in 1965. So he lives over here now. But he said growing up, like, we would not go out and use our names. We'd say brother and sister, because Eamon and Roisin were very, very clearly Gaelic, Irish Gaelic. And so he said, yeah, we'd just say, hey, brother, hey, sister, just to avoid that whole situation. So that was then. Now I would say it's not as much of a thing at all. You know, having spent time in the North myself, like I walk around with Irish speaking people and speak Irish regularly, and we've never had a bother. But in the past, you know, I would defer to maybe Egypt being Irish and having more historical knowledge than I do. But I would say in the past, maybe there was a bit of a political edge to it, but I don't know how much that's as much of a thing now.
I would venture to say, just from the time that we spent in Ireland and the people who we spoke with, that there are really a very large variety of reasons why people come to Irish and why they speak it. Some might come to it from kind of a nationalistic source, like, I am Irish, this is my country's language and part of my cultural identity, and so yeah, I'd like to take that on. Some come to it from a more like linguistic interest perspective. Some come to it from a cultural perspective, but sort of more associated with Gaelic culture, like music and dance and language and that area of it. So I don't think it's totally gone that some would be learning and using it with a kind of not nationalistic, not an agenda necessarily, but like a nationalism spin on it, perhaps. I think it's connected for sure. That's a great question.
Yeah, thank you. All right, folks. So how many of you would say that you would have some Irish? Can you pop your hand to the screen? How many of you would say, okay, we got Sam, Annie, Ellen, Aidan, I see you.
We got a couple of these.
Annie, yeah.
Alice and Emily, if you're willing, I'd love for you to turn on your cameras so that we can all speak with each other, but only if it's comfortable for you. No worries if you can't. Because we are a pretty small group, and it'll be nice to interact with each other as much as possible. So maybe I'll turn that around. Who here has no experience whatsoever with speaking Irish? 1, 2, 3.
That would be me.
Alice, okay. 4. And Emily, where do you fit on this spectrum, if you don't mind me asking? It's only so we know where we can start you. We're going to have sort of two groups, if we can, those who have a little bit of background and those who have none. But that's okay. We'll let Emily come as she will. So I think what we will do is I will make two rooms. Jonathan is going to take the newbies, and we'll give you guys a brand new introduction to Irish. I will take folks who have some Irish background and not ancestral, you know what I mean, language background. And we'll do a little bit of the intro stuff, and then we're going to do a fun icebreaker activity, which will teach you some concepts and hopefully get us learning a bit about each other. So in the room with Jonathan, I will put Kathy and Colby and Betsy and Emily and Sam. Oh, and Alice, I'm sorry. Thank you. And Alice there. And then I will take everybody else in my room. All right. And we will circle back here in about maybe 20 minutes or so and see how everybody's doing. Maybe 25 if we're having a good time. And so I'll see you all here in just a little bit. And what you need to do, a message will pop up on your screen that says join breakout room. You say yes or okay. All right. Go ahead. And here we are. That was easy. All right, y'all. So anybody who can turn on your mics so we get to hear each other. Okay. I know how much Irish Aoife has, and Ellen, it's good to see you again. Fáilte Rash. Annie, would you say you've learned some Irish from Aoife, or have you actually taken any classes or workshops or?
No, I've only learned by osmosis
That's
from
fine.
Aoife. I have some odd little phrases.
That's
and
fine.
that's it.
Sam?
The same, some from Nita and some from these classes, but with no practice, it's
Right.
really non-existent.
Right. Okay. I guess Tim.
And I took a few classes at the Elms,
That's
but it's
right.
been quite a few years since then.
Okay. So yeah, what I think we'll do then is we will start with a bit of a review of some really basic conversation items and have a bit of a, what's it called? A round robin, where we ask each other a few questions and remind ourselves about how to say a few things. And then we'll get to an icebreaker game, which I think is fun, but I'm a geek that way. So Anish, very much ag toshak le show, conversation starters toolkit. Ellen, Karima Aaron Spot, who I'm going to put you on the spot, or Deuce. Giaquit.
Giaquit.
Go my. So my Jerem said Giaquit. My Jerem said Giaquit. I say Giaquit Jertussa.
Ah, okay. Dies Moiriquit. Dies Moiriquit.
That's it.
Moiriquit.
Absolutely. Which, if anybody needs a reminder, when we say hello, this is a very formal greeting in Irish. It's still used, but it's a more formal one. And the direct translation is actually God to you. And then the send back is, oh, God and Mary to you.
Mhm.
But honestly, a lot of people would just use hiya. Hiya, or they'd skip right to how are you? Now, majerum sa live, if I say to you all, "Díreoibh," what would you all say back to me?
Dies Moirigwe.
That's it. Dies Moragwich. Everybody say it just for kicks. Dies
Yes,
Moragwich.
Margaret.
Dies Moirigwe.
Shine, Carcular. All right. Boggy Mujere and Shaw. So one of the fabulous things about learning Irish, as we know, is that you must be knowledgeable anyway about all the three major dialects, right? Because otherwise you will be kind of stuck if you only understand the dialect that you choose to speak or that you are most exposed to. So that means that some of the most common phrases, how are you, where are you from, what's your name, they all have dialectical variations that we get to try out. So over here are the question verb forms of how are you. Over here are some answers. Okay. And I'm just going to let you struggle it out with the pronunciation because that's the fun part. But I'll help whenever you need it. So Tusky Mish, I'm going to start by asking somebody a form of how are you? And you get to choose your answer over here. And then it's your turn. You pick a person in the group, ask them how they are. They get to answer and we'll carry it forward. Arish, Mission hist ije dus, right? It's tussa and guinea pig ije.
Carcalo.
Ije gajamer tatu.
Tommy Gama. Annie. Cain Kui Wiltu.
You got to be kidding. Tame Goma.
Gahalada hashki, my who. Gahinta. Right, now Annie, you get to pick one of these question forms, does not matter which one, and a person.
I'll choose Sam. Kanasatatu.
Okay, I'm going to do this one because I need to know how to say it. Tame agstrosilom.
Nice. Extroku. Stroku.
Stroku.
Lum. Extrokulium.
Agstroku-yom.
Yum. Very nice. Extrokulium. Nice pronunciation, Sam.
Yeah. Well, the plowing. You had me with plowing.
Plow it along. Just plow it along.
Okay.
Finish, Sam.
All right. And Ellen, konesatatu.
Tommy Goma. I can't see anybody's name. I can't see anybody other than Sam. So I don't know who's left.
Oh, how interesting. Well, Tim is left. I'll help you there.
Tim has left the chat.
Phone call.
Okay. Tim, konesatatu.
I'm going to try this Neil Kel Autumn.
Ain't the just Neil Kyle Autumn.
Neil Kyle Autumn.
Yeah.
Neil Kyle Autumn.
No, I'm all right. Not too bad. Yeah. Golitra. There's no loss on me. I haven't lost. I haven't lost anything. Gahinta, my shiv. All right. Agus nur Lauren to Ladinia, when you're talking with somebody, it's a back and forth, right? So this at the bottom here. Agus to him and you, right? So if we were to do this again and we did it kind of more conversationally, Sam, can he will to?
Okay. Tamegama Augustufain.
Tamagobra, Gurmahigat, lovely. Agus Ellen, Kajamer Tatu.
Tamago bra, agus Trevane.
Neil Kylerum, Gurmahigit. Nice. My shiv. So Ellen, just a quick tech thing. You can see one person when
I
there's
can only see you.
Is that
You're
right?
the only one.
So if you look at that window and you kind of move your mouse to the top of it, you should see.
Oh,
some
okay. Yeah, I
gray
have side by
squares,
side.
right?
Let me get gallery. Hang on.
That's
Okay,
it. Yeah.
now I can see
Sinead.
Amherst Irish Association and you, and that's it.
Okay. Huh. You may need, I don't know if you can drag that window so it's a little bigger or something.
Huh. Standard. No, that
Alright.
didn't do it either. I don't know.
I don't know. That's okay. We'll help. Oh my gosh, what did I do? We'll help you out there. Gosh, show, Anish, show. Pogulat. Okay. Boki Majere, Martian. Okay. Bagan Nismo and show, right? So to ask the question, oh, this came out a little weird, sorry. To ask the question, what's your name? We're not going to bother with that. We have Kintanimatort, Kadasanyamdich, or Kanimatort. And then the response, the easiest response, I like this one, right? Ismisha, my name. So it's kind of funny. I'm going to be saying your name and then asking what your name is. But Tim, Kintanimatort.
Ismisha Timothy.
Right. And then you can ask me back.
Kane Tanamata Orsa.
Ortza. Nice. Ortza. You. What's your name back? It's Misha Amanda. Annie. Kadasanam Ditch.
It's Misha Anya.
My hood. Can you go ahead and pop that question to somebody else?
I can't. Can a tarta?
Lovely. This part sounded fabulous. Kanyam. A tort.
A tort.
Yep. Just
Okay,
smush
Canyon,
all those vowels
tort.
together.
Canyon, a tort. Sam.
Sam is on him dome.
Yep. Okay. Bucky Mujere. That was just a little reminder of those things. Oh, I also want us to do this to kind of get the language under our tongues for a minute. Although you know what? I think Shinam Gomoki Mujere Anash. No, Kiano Anella. Okay, so we have Karabastich or Kastu. Ulster has two different ways of asking where you are from. Keasu or Kiasu from Connacht. Kadashu in Munster. So Egypt, pick a victim and go ahead and ask.
Kadastu, Tim.
And that first blank is
It's us, the place that
town?
you're from.
Mhm.
Right.
okay. So Isas Amherst me.
Mhm.
And then what do you think? How would you ask Egypt the question back?
I would probably say Augustusa.
That sounds great.
Is us on Torok Mór, me.
Sam, Tasilat, you ask somebody the question. A question.
Oh, all right. Annie, Karas too.
Hang on just a sec, because my Adobe just interrupted me. Just hang on.
The nerve.
Oh God.
That's so
Okay, wait a minute.
rude.
Sorry. Okay, do that again, please.
Okay, I'm going to try a different one this time. Annie, chaos too.
Mm.
Is St. Louis ma?
My who, Annie. I guess Annie, Tussie Lat, you ask Ellen. Ellen's last one left.
Okay. Ellen, Caddis too.
Is us Belchertown, May?
My shiva heard ya. All right, let's get on to the juicy stuff here, shall we? So, till agus now we're gonna find out some things about what people like and dislike or prefer, right? So this is a great, I just love these examples of the phrasing that Irish uses to get across certain points, right? So, an my lat something, an my latte, no, an ma latte. If you look at the literal translation of this, it is it good with you? This thing that we're talking about, is it good with you? Don't you love it? And then when your response is, it's good with me, or it's not good with me. And so if we want to ask somebody if they like something, like shockledge is going to come up a lot today. An mailat shockledge. Do you like chocolate? And then the way you respond, there's no simple yes or no response in Irish. In Irish, you take the question that's been asked to you, and you either give a positive form of that verb or question, or a negative form of it to respond to it, right? So here we have an mailat shockledge. The response would then be is my or ní mai. And we can get fancy. We can say is braille me, tush kerkador, is fuala me. Anybody who has that answer can get out right now. No, I'm kidding. Right. So, Ellen, an mailat shockledge.
Is my.
My who? All right. Ija an mailat an chas, the heat an mailat an chas.
Is bralame.
Okay. Okay. Now, to bake your noodles just a little bit. This changes ever so slightly if you're asking somebody, would they like something? Okay. So up here with an mailat, we have do you like something? But just below it, wailat rud was would you like something? And likewise, the answer for that has its own form. It's either bawai or nearway. Sam, wailat chocolate.
Brelame.
Nice. Gohinta. Okay. Couple more to add in here. Our preferences, very similar setup, right? The good news about this is that you probably wouldn't say, I wouldn't prefer all that often. So we're just going to stick with the positive answer here, the positive response. An farlat, no. An farlat chocolate, no pizza. Right? An farlat Anya, an farlat chocolate, no pizza.
Is for chocolate.
Go my. It's for lum.
Lum.
Yeah,
Chocolate.
it's for lum chocolate. But varlat, would you prefer? Tim, varlat chocolate, no pizza.
Varlin pizza.
Sparlam pizza. Simul. On simul. Okay. So I will help you with translations and to find the right answer for all of these questions, but we're going to find out some interesting things about each other. Asking some of these little icebreaker questions. So the first one, I will ask somebody, and then that person will choose the next one and ask another person, and we'll do it in a little train, okay? So my first victim is going to be Sam. Okay. Anan is pineapple. Oh, I just have to do a really quick side. This was an incredibly heavily contested issue in my office this past week. I have a fun fact board that I put up, fun facts of the week on, and I put up a poll and had everybody who came through my office vote whether they think pineapple on pizza is a good idea. It was so close. It was like 15 to 17. The yeses won in the end, just so you know. So, Sam, an mailat anan pizza.
You roll the screen up just a little bit so I can
I can indeed. An mailat anan pizza.
Ish brea lom pizza.
Ah,
I don't know. I want to say I like pineapple on pizza, but I don't know quite how to get there.
that's I can help you out there. So Isbralyum, you got that part, right? Isbralyum.
Isbralam.
And then just repeat this part. Isbralyum.
Anam ar pizza.
Lovely.
Isbralam anam ar pizza.
Pizza. Gahinta. All right. I want you to try to read the second question to the victim of your choosing.
Okay. Tim an farnat te no cafe.
Let me know if you need me to scroll, Tim.
Yeah, I think the answer would be Isfarlat Cafe.
Ain't why. Although if you're talking about yourself,
Isfarlam.
Yum. Yes.
Isfarlam.
Yum Cafe.
Yeah.
Right. Isfarlam Cafe. Oh, Simu. Okay. All right. All right. Tim Leonard Ivertree.
I'll ask Ellen. Do you want me to try to pronounce this?
Oh, yes, I do.
Can I interrupt for just a very
Yeah.
moment because of my board meeting? I need to go, but
Oh,
to say Gurmagat and Slán.
girl, my guts. We can't pick on you for one more, can we?
No,
Or
you can't.
you're tripping off. Okay. Slán
Thank
Annie.
you.
Flo Nanny.
Hi,
Well,
Annie.
Circular. Okay, so Karitu and Hester Ellen, right?
Right. So Aralat, Orlish, Kale, Hinem,
Henyam, yes.
Kane, Kyung.
No, Shokesh Bagan Nis Jakra, but sorry much Kujila. Wailat. So first question, what does this part mean? Anybody can answer that.
Do you like?
You like, yeah.
Yeah.
Would you like?
Would you like? Would you?
Yes, would you like?
Okay.
Erlish Kjol.
No clue.
A musical instrument.
That's it.
Ah.
A henyam,
Okay.
to play.
Uh-huh.
Would you like to play a musical instrument?
And the second part, can
Oh, Ken Kyun, which one?
oh. Yeesh. Isfarlum, Orlis, Kale, Shenum,
A henyam.
Ahenium, sorry.
Very nice. No, that's fine. But you chose the answer that means I prefer, but I think you want I would like. Is that right?
Oh,
Right. So Erwailat Bawailam.
it's Ma?
Right. Chi and Shoahashki.
Okay.
Wailat, ba wai. I would, right? And a lovely thing about Irish is that you don't have to answer with a whole long sentence. You can simply say, ba wai. And that's it. Ba wai. So, Wailat Erlish Kyola Henyam Ellen.
Did you?
I asked you the same question again.
Oh, okay. Oh God, now I have to remember.
It's right here. Wailat
Oh.
Erlish Kyola Henyam.
Ima,
Ba wai.
Hawaii, sorry.
Ba wai. That's fine.
Hawaii.
And if you had your choice, what instrument would you play? You can answer in English or Irish.
Do you have an example there?
No.
Oh,
Just curious.
I don't know. I can't say it in Irish, sorry.
Okay, how about English? I'm just curious.
A guitar?
Yeah, you know what it is? Guitar.
I was right.
There
Okay.
you go. All right, Ellen, I'm looking at the time and we do have to rejoin the others soon, but Ellen, how about you ask number 4 to the person of your choosing?
Oh God. Okay, I'll ask either.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, our fair lot.
Good.
Dulgoti an Pictureland.
Mm-hmm.
Nodul ag Campil.
Gahinta, my who?
Barlam, Dolgadi and Ficturlan.
Neil Dulagat at Sahampal. Well.
Neil, ni hanni and na mosquitoes lum.
Well, Garker and Sheelam Garahim Majarash and Grupa Ella will rejoin the big group. Any major questions about any of this first, though? No. Okay, calculator. So,
Actually, well, I don't know. So maybe my question about learning this is, do you think this language is easier for a native English speaker? Do you think it's easier to learn audibly or visually? Because looking at the combinations of letters on the screen is nothing like English.
Right.
But the sounds, you can kind of find your way into the sounds hearing them. That's
I think that depends on the person, but the way my brain works and worked, first learning this language is listening. I had a wonderful tape, Now You're Talking, that I listened to in the car all the time. And I got the sounds of it in my head and on my tongue. And then when I looked at it written in the book, I was like, oh, that's what that's what it is. But
I would agree with that.
My personal philosophy, if it's communication that we're looking for,
Mhm.
There are multiple ways to communicate, but I think that speaking and listening is the most important and salient way to get it. Yeah.
We can go back when everyone. I had forgotten that I had muted myself when Jonathan asked the question earlier about when if you are existing out in the world in Ireland and you have to interface with any like a transit system or a government office or something, are the like on a bus, would the stops be announced in Irish and English or just Irish or?
Did you ask? I missed the very first part of it. Did you ask if it was in a city region or a Gaeilge?
Well, I mean, really kind of anywhere. What makes me think of it is we were in Montreal one time and on the metro, all the stops were announced in French, and I thought, well, I don't know anything, but if I had to rely on getting someplace for a week, I would learn it that fast.
Yeah. I had that same exact thought when I was in Montreal. I was like, oh, I could live here and learn French really easily. Um,
On the Lewis, it happens
on
on
the
the Lewis, only on the Lewis
yeah.
and on
The
the main
train.
trains.
Yeah, not the bus systems.
No.
No.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, and I know on some tours, like some Dublin bus tours that they do, they give a little cursory, like Fáilte Rih go léir go baile clia. They give a little like token Irish phrase of welcome everybody to Dublin. Sam, for those of you who just came back, Fáilte Rih go léir, Sam was just asking a really great question about whether like transportation, public transport systems in Ireland speak in English and Irish, like to say the name of a town or where you're going or whatnot. And AJ and I were just coming up with the answer together that it's on the public train system and the Lewis in Dublin, but nowhere else as far as we know. Yeah. So I had a blast with my group. How did everybody feel about that? How'd it go? Any big questions that popped up?
I think the biggest question my group had was how fast and how soon can they become completely fluent speakers. And I said, they've nailed it. They just got to go on, and we'll take care of you. You'll be sorted inside of a year.
Takes about a week, and then then it should be golden. Aiden's rolling his eyes at me right now. Yeah. And an interesting thing that came up in my group is that I took the group of people who had some exposure to the language already, but I think most people concurred that maybe they'd had some of it, but they hadn't used it much, and then it got rusty, and the meanings of things were a little hard to grab again. And it was you, Sam, right, that was asking about like listening to learn a language versus reading it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, there's a deeper answer to that question, Sam, that we could go on about. I won't, because I know we're finishing up, but in the Irish school system, historically, there's been a very great weight on written Irish instead of spoken Irish in the classroom. And so I know a lot of Irish people who went through school system. They had to take Irish as a subject, and they hated it. They hated learning it in the school because it was treated kind of like this archaic element of Irish culture, or like Latin, something that had to be studied and memorized and all that, and learned as almost as a written language that you can speak, but predominantly from literature, and it had no life to them as speakers, as learners of it. So
But if you don't mind,
I think the mood is changing now. There's a lot more emphasis on spoken Irish. But what were you gonna say?
I have some friends of mine who are Irish language teachers, and they would be in my generation or even younger. And yeah, it's a totally different ballgame now. They said, when I was in school, it would be like if you're trying to learn English, having somebody read A Tale of Two Cities. It's like, you wouldn't really do that to someone who's learning English. So they had to do that a lot. But in the past, 15-20 years, it's been changing a lot. And I know a lot of young people who are like, oh, my favorite class in school was Irish. Like, absolutely. It's so much fun. We go out, we do things, we talk, and there's been a huge shift towards exactly what Amanda was saying, away from that, which is conversation, spoken, actual use. I have no data other than knowing professional teachers in Ireland who tell me that, and students. I've met young people who are like, yeah, Irish is my favorite class. It's great. So hopefully that's going forward and changing.
Yeah.
Well,
Go ahead. Yeah. Colby, is it?
I was thinking as we were doing this and practicing in the breakout room, it made me think about the speaking of Irish. Like I thought of songs and poetry, like it has a way that's spoken and heard. It sits in me differently than I imagine, and I know from English than an academic situation. Learning Latin, learning Spanish. Seems poetic to me in the sounds.
yeah, you got a lot there. One thing that I found actually quite challenging in our degree was when we were taking our basically classes that deal with the song tradition, storytelling tradition, is that I felt like I was navigating the course fine. I was going out and speaking Irish all the time with people in Galway and my professors and lecturers and stuff. But when we got into some of the songs and stories, the languages can be very different. You know, it's not just it's like English, right? We're using a certain set of vocabulary and structure now, but sometimes you get into songs and it's like the language is so complex. There's all these things happening that you never really use, or you would rarely use in just normal conversation, right? It's something we call severus na Gaeilge, so the wealth of Irish. It's such incredibly rich language. And one of the great benefits that studying songs and the song tradition has for us is to illuminate some of these really beautiful uses of language that, you know, not passing judgment, but you don't really see very much anymore in contemporary society.
Mm.
Ellen, yeah.
Can I just make a comment here? There's a fabulous book, Colby, that you might enjoy. It's called 32 Words for Field. And it will blow your mind. I mean, I can't sleep. When I start reading that book, I can't read it before bed because my heart starts racing and
Oh my goodness.
oh yeah, I go crazy.
That's good.
It just blows my mind.
32 words for
32
field.
words for field. And it's got words in the Irish language, and it takes you from the Paleolithic all the way to the present using one word, you know. I go, well.
But I find that I'm reading it right before bed, and it actually helps me go into a deep sleep because he takes you on such a beautiful journey that you can just go and drift off.
I can't. I get too excited.
This book has just reignited this love of language and storytelling and like the beauty of how you can express with words what you feel here. It's an incredible book.
Yeah.
And let's name the author, Mongan Magan.
Yeah.
And Colby, I have a copy of it. I'll drop it over to you.
I was just reaching, I have it on my shelf here too. Yeah, it's great. And as you get into language study and as you pursue it, and this has actually trickled into my English too, is it's ignited in me an increasing desire to make my language use more sophisticated. Not out of reach, but just more sophisticated, because really, you know, you can get by with, you know, basic stuff and that's whatever, that's fine, no judgment there. But like for me personally, there is so much there and so much that was there and could still be there. And I would like to be a part of that. Go ahead there, Tim.
I just want to mention, because we have it, and I've only touched it once or twice, is there is Irish television and Irish radio stations where you can just listen. And I've done that in the past. And it's when you're learning the language, it's nice to listen to it and pull things out. And when I was better at it, I would start to understand a little bit about what they were having a conversation about. I wouldn't get more than 3/4 of it, but you'd start to pick little pieces of it out. Exactly, TG4. And there's pieces of it that you can pop out. And then again, pronunciation, you can start hearing how it sounds, and that's how you start to recognize it.
Be astounded how much you can learn that way. We have, I don't think he'd mind me sharing this. We have a friend who is blind, who took it upon himself to learn Irish over the course of the pandemic. Now, I think he is particularly adept at picking up languages, but he taught himself Irish predominantly by listening to Radio na Gaeltachta. and is absolutely fluent now, like inside of a year and a half. So whoever asked that question earlier, how long does it take to to learn a language? I suppose it depends on how much exposure you get and how much time you spend. You know, you can learn a lot that way. If anybody here has Apple TV, TG Kahar is available as an app on Apple TV right here in the States. You don't have to pay any extra to get it. I don't
Actually, you
think.
can get it free
Yeah.
just by doing tgcahar.ie.
Yeah.
And they're fantastic drama series.
Yeah, oh, yeah,
And
yeah.
music. Yeah.
Although then you have to watch it on a computer rather than a television. But yeah, it's all connected. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's a fun thing.
Can you spell that, please, so we can Google it?
Oh, sure. Do you know how to look in the chat function, Ellen?
Yeah.
There's a little bubble. If you click on that, Jonathan wrote those two things. So it's TG4.
Oh, okay. I see.
That's the television station.
G4.
And then Radio na Gaeltachta is the Irish language radio station. Any other? Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say also, it's really fun to hear the translation, the literal translation into English. Like, there is a hunger on me. I just love it.
Yeah.
A whole different orientation to the world.
And that's one of the greatest things I find, when you learn different languages and you're getting an insight into the culture, an insight into how people look at the world and the universe, maybe through a different lens. Ija, Amanda and I were just talking earlier, like one of our favorite expressions to give somebody a hug is you say, Kri is cha, and Kri is your heart, and Ischa is the word that means moving in. So Kri is cha means, hearts are moving in together. And I think it's just fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Yep. And we, in the other group, we were talking about, saying that you like something or that you dislike something, whatever. And the way that is literally translated is it good with you? Does this give good to you, kind of? So yeah, it is poetic, Colby. It's a really nice phraseotomy. That's not a word, but it should be.
Well, Anisha Harta, any other questions before we sign off and release you to enjoy sunshine that's still around?
It's been such a pleasure having you all
Thank
here today.
you.
Thank you so much.
Very
for
much.
joining
Thank you
us.
so much. This was great.
Míle buíochas agus go ndéirí an bóthar libh eile.
And don't be afraid to reach out to us either through the Amherst Irish Association or any other way. Most of you have some connection to us. So take care. Buona gisaltas and la. Enjoy your days. Great to see you all.
Bye, everyone.
Slán!